What's up, my beautiful people? Welcome to this channel. It's your boy Dixon. Today we're going to react to the most massive animal birth that has broken the nature. Let's go.
In February 2022, a young TikTok user claiming to live in the UK began creating a frog army. As he put it, he noticed some type of eggs in a shallow pond near his home. In recent videos, he claims to have collected more than 1.4 million eggs that hatched into tadpoles in a backyard pool he built. The goal is to create the largest army of frogs in history. Other users thought that was cool and posted a video of the insane amphibian breeding with hundreds of millions of views and likes.
What was the reason for you to...
That was the reaction of ecologists. The fact that the leader of the army of frogs promised to release a huge number of animals into the wild for the sake of popularity only made it worse.
For what reason, man?
If I get what subtle means, here's a subtle reminder to hit the like button now. Don't forget about it. It's important to us. You can't just tilt the balance so heavily in favor of one species in nature. It'll have serious consequences. Even though TikTok users might think, sorry, putting TikTok users and thinking in one sentence got me chuckling. Anyway, as usual, people think they're helping, but they're actually making things worse for other creatures in the environment.
There's nothing
at the
that
very least, they're
here.
creating more disease carriers. And at worst, they're helping an invasive species. Researchers stress that human-induced frog migration is already a big problem for species. Once a fungus brought by people during frog relocations led to a mass extinction, wiping out more than 90 frog species. Plus, releasing this many frogs could simply be against the law. The punishment severity varies by country. It's not just because it affects the whole nature of things, but also because it harms people. The frog army quickly started spreading to other people's backyards, and one of the user's neighbors was even forced to leave. He left without complaining to the police, starting a petition, or airing his grievances online. Yeah, right. He just left. No matter how it was with the neighbors, things aren't looking so good for the frogs. Most likely, a large portion of frogs will die because they'll all be competing fiercely for food. It's no accident that in the wild, only a certain percentage of animals of each species survive. Otherwise, they just can't feed themselves. Plus, having a bunch of animals packed together makes it easier for diseases to spread quickly if they suddenly show up. That's basically how epidemics tend to go down. The big problem here is that one bad thing leads to another, like a chain reaction. Once the frog army shows up, we might see a sudden drop in insect population because, well, they'll be eaten. It won't do the frogs any favors, but that isn't any consolation to the insects. And when there are fewer insects, it means fewer pollinators, and that spells trouble for plants. Also, the big surge in frog numbers can throw off the balance for animals that eat them, like foxes, hedgehogs, and rodents in the UK. So if there's an abundance of frogs, you'd probably see more foxes sticking around. Those foxes would then have more offspring, and it's anyone's guess what happens next. They'll affect a bunch of other animals, plants, and even tiny microbes. The best outcome, the surplus fox pups don't make it because the fox frenzy dies down and things go back to normal. The thing is, many frogs have this habit of going back to the ponds where they were born. So it seems like we'll be dealing with this frog problem for quite a bit longer.
You can't even stay with them.
It's somewhat comforting to believe that the whole frog army scenario might be a sham, cooked up solely for views and likes. It seems like they're exaggerating the number of frogs and the location of the video creator. Chances are he's living out in the sticks somewhere trying to scare TikTok users, and really it's not all that difficult to do. Whoa, check it out, a meteor's heading towards Earth. Just gotta capture this moment and upload it to TikTok. It's really surprising that this isn't just a one-time thing. Another TikToker, this time from the US, had the same idea. He claimed to have released 250,000 ladybugs in Central Park, New York City, and got slapped with a lawsuit for it. He quickly left the US and moved to Colombia to avoid paying the fine. It might seem absurd at first, but how can someone even think about releasing ladybugs? Well, it started when a guy found out that you could get 100,000 ladybugs for just $75. He promised to organize a Ladybug Invasion in New York if his post got 30 likes. The video got 73.6 thousand likes and 1.5 million views. Out of 634 comments, some weren't in favor of the idea, and one user warned that it could lead to a lawsuit. Well, that's
we
exactly
don't need
what
this
happened.
shit, man.
The user got
We don't
slapped
need
with
this
a
kind of
$350,000 lawsuit for
experiment or this
environmental
kind of
terrorism,
crazy shit,
tried to
because
flee,
they
got put under
don't
house arrest,
bring
and eventually
any
ended up
sense
in
to
Colombia on his
human
second
life.
attempt. Like with frogs, there's a chance that this story is just made up, even though it's hard to fake videos like these.
So,
as I mentioned earlier, the deception here likely lies in exaggeration. Having an abundance of ladybugs is never a good thing, especially when
it's
they're
never a good
artificially
thing.
bred.
Tell
Just
them
take a
it's
look at
never
the
a
southern
good
United
idea.
States, where ladybugs stage annual invasions. Sure,
They
they're
are going to
helpful
invade the
bugs for
plants. You're
gardeners,
going to
but
have
still,
less
having a
production
swarm of them in your
plants.
house? No thanks.
Look at this.
Ladybugs
If you
mainly
imagine
eat tiny
a
bugs,
couple
so
of
even with
ladybugs in your
hundreds of
home,
thousands in Central Park,
you can't even
they
stay
won't
there.
cause havoc like a
I'm
locust
sure you
swarm.
can't even stay
Plus,
there.
they
You're
would
going to
probably
flee away from
starve
that
since there
house.
wouldn't be enough food for them in the city.
And tell me
Where
the
in New York
most
City
important
would
thing
they
that
even
this channel
find
going
that
to
many
do?
agents,
Nothing.
or any other prey for that matter? Let's face it, locusts are the ones who are wrecking nature. They've got two
This is
modes,
shit,
chill and chomp.
locusts.
When they're chill, they're just minding their own business, flying solo.
We've
But when they
experienced
switch
this
to
in our
chomp
country. Actually,
mode,
they
they
come
transform
and
into voracious
they
monsters. These monsters swarm by the millions,
just
devouring everything
feed
in their
on
path. When they
plants,
gather into a
and
swarm,
when
locusts
they
not
come
only
into your
alter their
plants,
behavior, but
then
also
you
their appearance.
probably going to get
Researchers
nothing.
have noticed that the insect's color can change.
Nothing at all.
Today, we know that locusts turn into monsters when there are lots of other locusts around. But here's the thing. The transformation
locusts are
happens
shit,
just from
man.
touching their legs or antenna, depending on the species. Yep, one locust touches another and bam, you've got a swarm of ravenous monsters on the loose. Basically, if a bunch of locusts were born in one place, they'd end up bumping into each other and quickly turn into a swarm. So if someone had the bright idea to purposely gather and breed these bugs in one spot, the consequences would be, well, let's just say disastrous. Can't express it more explicitly due to YouTube's policies, but you get the picture. Even remote regions can be affected. For instance, according to National Geographic, in 1988, a swarm flew from West Africa to the Caribbean, covering over 3,100 miles in just 10 days. The locust doesn't just fly around, it also eats crops. According to a report from the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, the locust invasion in West Africa from 2003 to 2005 affected 22 countries and wiped out over 80% of the crops. Those were giant swarms of insects, swarms as big as cities, a real plague. If you're curious why locusts migrate in the first place, it's pretty simple. When there's a lot of rain in their habitat, locusts start reproducing more. A big population needs lots of food to avoid starvation. Then when things get tight, they all scatter to find food farther away. Actually, having too many insects gathered in one place isn't good. It doesn't have to be locusts. Even a bunch of crickets can be a problem. In late May and early June 2023, tens of thousands of Mormon cricket eggs buried about an inch deep in the soil began hatching in Nevada, causing chaos. This cricket invasion hit Elko, a small town of around 20,000 people, particularly hard. Every year, a new batch of insects hatches from eggs laid in the soil. Then they gather together and migrate across the region, devouring all the vegetation they come across. But in 2022, the migration reached the city, and it was terrible. Not only were there crickets everywhere, alive and dead, but they also left such a horrendous smell, like burnt flesh, that residents had to plug their noses while driving. Blame it on the crazy weather. First, there was a lot of snow all winter, then a soggy spring made the crickets take their sweet time to hatch, and when summer drought hit, they all decided to come out at once. They could have just stayed dormant in the ground for up to 10 years or more, but nope, it's chow time now. Mormon crickets eat local perennial plants, bushes, and crops, producing food sources for native animals. Their appetite can lead to soil erosion, worsen water quality, and deplete soil nutrients, potentially harming pasture and farmland ecosystems. Overall, it's not a pretty picture. And these aren't even locusts.
It's not a pretty picture at all.
You know, it's hard to believe that all of a sudden there'd be a massive surge in the number of one type of animal.
No.
And nature would be
I'm
totally
against
cool
this
with
shit.
it. In the science world, that's called overabundant species. And it can definitely mess with the balance of an ecosystem. It can really throw things off. Overabundance happens for different reasons. Sometimes it's natural, like when there are heavy rains, as seen with locusts. Other times, humans are to blame. Through their impact on the natural environment, the introduction of invasive species, and so on. Overabundance leads to food shortages, which in turn cause animals to roam in search of it, damaging landscapes, ecosystems, and causing imbalances in various ways. Essentially, overabundance creates a vicious cycle for the environment. Since everything in nature is interconnected, everyone will suffer. These are lionfish, and while they might resemble beautiful tropical fish, they're a species that produces around 2 million eggs every year. So in just one breeding season, way too many lionfish are born. In the Atlantic and Caribbean, it's the breeding habits of lionfish that have made them invasive. These predatory fish quickly take over reefs, reducing the variety of local marine life. Female lionfish can produce 2 egg sacs every 4 days, each containing up to 15,000 eggs. So each female could end up with a whopping 2 million eggs per year. It's not just a lot, those sacs also pack some nasty chemicals. That means a lot more eggs hatched than with other fish. Nobody wants to chow down on toxic eggs when there's a safer option available. Moreover, without predators in the new ecosystems, lionfish thrive. Many fish would rather starve than attack a lionfish, so their population grows even larger, although it's already too big. Even if we put in a lot of effort to remove them, they'll come back very soon. So eradicating them is out of the question. You know what's really intriguing? Scientists think that it only took 3 lionfish to kickstart the invasion into the Atlantic. Nobody knows exactly how it happened, but those 3 fish must have popped out millions of eggs, and look where we are now. They reproduced at an astonishing speed, unlike anything seen in the sea before. Within a few years, lionfish transformed from being non-existent in this area to being abundant. And this could happen pretty much anywhere with the right climate. If the lionfish manage to reproduce, they'll do it in such numbers that nothing can stop them afterwards. All we'll be left with is dealing with the aftermath. This includes local species being consumed or starving because flying fish will devour the food they depended on. Actually, they might just devour everything in sight, since these fish have a scary appetite. Their stomachs can expand by up to 30 times. That's some serious munching potential. Naturally, all this hits the fishing industry and even the tourist business hard. The invasion of lionfish in Brazil could spell ecological disaster, while the young reef fish population in the Bahamas has plummeted by 80% in just 5 weeks. Lionfish are incredibly destructive. Wherever they end up, these fish wreak havoc on local ecosystems by devouring native species and disrupting food chains. So their reputation as one of the most harmful invasive fish is entirely deserved. But the last creatures you'd expect trouble from are geese. Geese? How could they possibly cause any harm? Alright, so Canada geese, this waterfowl species from the duck family, used to nest in some parts of southern Canada, and their populations weren't huge. Up until the 1960s, people were actively hunting them, plus messing up their habitats. You know, the usual stuff. Then people wisened up and started restoring the populations, even relocating birds to new areas where they hadn't bred before. And these new spots turned out to be really comfortable. Canada geese started breeding like crazy. Urbanization helped them thrive. There are hardly any predators in cities, and laws protect birds from humans. And then the nightmare began. Today there are around 4 million Canada geese in the USA, with an average annual growth rate of 10% over the next 3 years. We can expect to see an additional 1.2 million new birds joining the population. Yep, they sure know how to multiply quickly and efficiently. One reason why a small flock can grow rapidly in number is that Canada geese naturally return to their birthplace. This means that more and more birds are born in the same place over time. They just keep coming, increasing the flock size exponentially. And it's not just about their numbers. They can seriously mess up the environment by overgrazing. Where Canada geese nest, nothing grows on the ground anymore. This affects farming and makes the water quality go downhill because their droppings dissolve in it, putting fish at risk. Plus, with fewer plants, there are fewer insects for other birds to feed on, and less food means less birds. For example, the sparrow population has suffered greatly. When I mention overgrazing, I mean it's really overboard. And the poop problem, it's just as bad. A fully grown Canada goose eats about 4 pounds of grass every day and leaves behind roughly the same amount of droppings. That means one bird produces around 1,450 pounds of waste a year, and Canada geese can live up to 24 years. Restoring the habitat after these birds would take decades, and even then, it's not guaranteed that restoration is possible at all. Wouldn't it be easier if Canada geese didn't breed in such large numbers? Of course. And it would be even better if people didn't interfere with their existence at all. Could you see if you hit the like button? If you did, thanks a lot. See you later.
Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. There are so many things to learn, and we have to take care of our environment. Remember to hit that subscription button, like, comment, and share. See you in the next video.